Awesome. So we are live. Stacking Bricks podcast, episode 1. And yeah, we're free balling it.
We're free balling. That's a good way to start. Free balling.
So, all right. Why don't you get us rolling? Introduce yourself, a little background, where you come from, who you are, all that good stuff.
That's like totally loaded.
Do you want me to start?
Well, yeah, it's your podcast, not mine.
All right, cool. So, little background on me. I am Josh Kerekes, and I started Stacking Bricks last year. There's the greater concept to Stacking Bricks is basically that you develop daily habits, and each one of those habits is a brick, building a better you every single day. And I've tried to channel that into fitness and nutrition and developing a better mindset over time and passing that off to people that I help, my clients, and to the internet community and all of my social media dealings and my nefarious dealings. And yeah, I brought Leah into it sort of at the beginning, but you know, she was slow on picking it up only because it was something new. You know, that's kind of where you would segue in here. Like, tell them a little bit like where you come from and your background and stuff like that.
So I'm Leah Kerekes, and I'm from Queens, New York. Don't really have a background in any type of fitness or anything like that. I did dance for a really long time, so I was physically fit until I decided I didn't want to be physically fit anymore. And yeah, then we got married, had a kid, got complacent and lazy in life like most people do in their 30s. And yeah, then just kind of followed suit, I guess, into the whole fitness thing.
Yeah, I'd say so. Do you think like there was any kind of fitness that used to go on in your family? I mean, dance is a form of fitness after all. So,
I mean, I danced, and I danced 5 days a week, all different styles. But we, rode bikes often. We skied, we snowboarded.
so you were physically active as a kid.
Definitely physically active as a kid, but, boyfriends and all that fun stuff when you turn 18 and you stop.
Nefarious dealings.
Yeah, nefarious dealings.
Yes.
Yeah, all that fun stuff.
Yeah. Yeah.
So.
Well, life has a way of sidetracking you for sure. And as you grow up, you get involved in different things, and there's a social aspect in society to, you go
For
out,
sure.
you go to the bar, hang out with your friends at your house or at other people's houses, and, somebody lights up, you're hanging out, you're partying, whatever. But that becomes life. Like, that was our life for so long.
Yes, weed took over all the activity. And then the only other activity that was going on was eating.
Because it comes naturally with the territory, right? Yeah.
For sure.
But, that's also New York culture, though, too, if you think about it. Because,
yeah.
food is New York culture. Like, let's be real.
Not that you really care much when you're high. You just kind of eat whatever's available, which is usually a 24-hour bodega. But
the choices are better, though.
Yeah. Sandwich.
Instead of calling Domino's, it's like, let's go to Cherry Valley, or let's go to...
Yeah, sandwich at 2 a.m. definitely hits.
You know what I'm saying? So
For sure.
Yeah, but it definitely does sidetrack you. And I feel like there's a community of fitness in New York, but it's not like it is here, where there's such like an outdoor, everybody's very physically active, unless you're a retiree, and then that's different.
I guess it's dependent on where in New York you're living or what you're doing in New York. Obviously, like when you're in Manhattan, there's this look that you're supposed to have.
Right.
Depending on how much money you make, what your occupation is, all that kind of stuff. You see a lot of celebrities and models and things like that. So all of it is so in your face every day. It's not hard to measure yourself against people like that when you're constantly seeing them, versus when you're in the outer boroughs, you're dealing more with like everyday people, I guess.
Well, that actually brings up a good point too, when you talk about people who are, of sort of higher social status, and there's sort of an expectation that you should be physically fit, that you should look a certain way. And when you don't, there's like this backlash against it, I feel like.
Well, so
What do you think?
within the last 20 years with the body positivity movement, I think that there's been a lot more leeway with body size in conjunction with how you would dress and designers and things like that. Whereas prior to that, if you didn't fit in a specific size, the designers weren't going to make clothes for you. So even if you were an heiress or something like that, like you would have to have your clothes like specifically made for you if you were not the sample size.
Yeah.
And a sample size prior to 10, 15 years ago was a 2 or a 4. There was no option above that. I mean, even a size 6 was considered plus size in the modeling world.
Yeah. Well, you worked in the modeling agency, in a modeling agency for a long time.
8 years.
Tell me what that was like for you, being somebody who didn't fit into that social norm of that part of society.
I mean, I guess obviously you noticed the difference in how I looked versus how they looked, but I also saw the difference in how they felt versus how I felt about myself. Also, just because somebody is skinny does not necessarily mean that they're healthy.
That's true.
A lot of
That's
them
a really good point.
looked 20 years older than me, and we're talking about people at the time I was in my mid-20s. They looked 10 years, 15, 20 years older than me, and they were younger. Some of them were 16, 17 years old. It's just, it's a hard, rough life that they live, and I give them all a lot of credit. And, hearing that you're fat and you're this and you're that when you're 120 pounds and you're still growing into your body, it hurt a lot of them, and you see that every single day. It sucks.
So do you think that the expectation that's in the modeling world was hurtful towards those girls over the long term? Do you think that affected them negatively?
100%. 100%. I mean, I dealt with a lot of them crying constantly, and, just having to remind them every day, you're not fat, you're not this, you're not, what they're saying about you. The problem is that there's an expectation that your body looks a specific way.
Yeah.
And if your body doesn't look that specific way, then when you are on camera, it presents differently. And again, we're talking about a different time when there wasn't the type of programs like Photoshop has available now where you can change the way somebody's body looks in a photo.
Sure.
You can augment it in certain ways at that time, but not to the point that you can do it now. I mean, AI has changed so much with how you can augment the way that you look, even on your camera, on your phone. So,
right.
Yeah, it was definitely different for them back then. And a lot of times you would hear the word squishy.
Squishy.
They look squishy.
Wow.
Wow. And it was a way to say you're not toned. You don't go to the gym. You don't look good. But then again, when do you have time to go to the gym? These kids were barely eating. They were paying rent to live in these units in Manhattan where there's 6 of them. They're going to castings all day. They're paying money back to the agencies to pay for their photos, pay for their cards, pay for taxis when they have to go all over the place. They had to have train passes, bus passes, all these things to get around all day.
Right.
And all that money had to be paid back. It's not like it was free or given to them. They were 100% paying into it. And a lot of them went into debt. And that's something that a lot of people don't know about them.
Mm-hmm.
So you're talking about a bunch of 17-year-olds who think they're going to make it big because somebody told them, you're beautiful and I can get you on a magazine. Well, but if you're not, a supermodel, you're not making millions of dollars. You're lucky if you're making $50,000 for the entire year. And again, you're paying back rent and photos and cards and all this other stuff, plus paying the agent fees, and the agents take a nice chunk every time that you book a job. So, they really weren't making what you would think. And a lot of them were hungry all the time.
Do you think being a worker within the modeling world that you were sort of like an outlier, and how did that look? How did that feel for you, sort of with that expectation, but then like you're in the background, you're like, you just do the work? Is that sort of the way it went down? Or
I mean, it broke my heart to work in a job like that. I loved it. I loved being in the city. I loved being around all of it. I thought it was such an interesting and fun job, but at the same time, there was so much heartbreak in that job. It was depressing. And I
from the girls?
remember the girls, the guys, there's a lot of drugs and there's a lot of, you know, SA and a lot of things like that that go on with it within that industry as a whole. And it's very hard to get on the train and go home to Queens every night knowing
I can
that this is
understand.
what's going on. And there's an expectation that when you're in that world that you're going to go to the clubs and you're going to go to the parties and you're going to do all those things. And then, you can't do anything if something happens to you. You're not allowed to, because then you're going to get blacklisted.
Yeah.
So,
So walk me through your journey into fitness. Now I know that's kind of a loaded question because there was this long, obviously we were together at that point. So there was this long period of time between you really leaning into the gym and like where we started, where you were working girl in the outer boroughs. Like, walk me through the process of where you sort of ended up to that point. Like,
so when we got together, there was a lot of, things that went on within our relationship that caused a lot of stress, a lot of chaos, a lot of resentment built and things like that, which is why both of us leaned into drugs and, for you, alcohol and food and just tons of bad habits and addiction.
well, music for me, for sure.
Yeah. And for me, I leaned into, our daughter and raising her. But that was my entire identity for a really long time, especially not working for those first 2 years and being at home by myself. So I, going from being a little bit more active to being completely sedentary every day, I gained a lot of weight. And then just because I was gaining weight and you were, in your own thing in your head and depressed and angry and frustrated and everything that was going on, it just continued to add and add and add. And I just got more and more depressed, gained more and more weight. And then 100% the day that everything changed was the day when I took Bree to go pumpkin picking. And I had to climb across the seat of the car because somebody had blocked us in and I couldn't get into the driver's side. So I had to climb through the other side, and a whole family, it was like 10 people with their kids, are pointing and laughing at me and making fun of me because I'm overweight. And Bree was with me and she cried because she was so sad that they were making fun of me. And she understood what was going on at that point. I mean, she was already like, 7, 8 years old?
Yeah.
And I remember coming home and Steve was there and you guys saw me and said, "What happened?" And I just cried hysterically.
I remember that.
Oh, and Ray was there too, I think. And that is what changed it for me, because I was tired of people looking at me and only seeing a fat woman. And you don't know what someone's going through and why they've gotten to the point that they've gotten to. All you do is make fun of somebody. And
'Cause all they see is a surface level.
right. And again, like, I can understand that. Obviously, like, you can look at people and you could be like, "Oh, look at that about them," or "Look at that," or "Look at their nose," or "Look at their hair." But that day for me triggered something that just broke me down in a way that it hadn't before. And again, we had been going through a lot of stuff at that point and back and forth, and things were being said that, added and compounded to
Oh yeah, we were on the
how I
the
felt.
rocks. We were in a really bad place.
And it added to how I felt about myself. But that specific day, knowing that they did that, and I think it was because it was in front of Brianna and in front of their children, and they were teaching their children such terrible behavior, I think that's what really hit home for me. And that's when I feel like I started to change, because that's when I started trying, I did keto, and then I went on Noom, and I had some success with that. And then we started going to the gym more often, and we went to, we tried all different gyms and LA Fitness and Five Corners. And then we found Siege because you needed a, what was that thing? Oh my God.
Oh, a reverse hyper.
The reverse hyper.
Try
So
to
I
fix my back.
looked up reverse hyper, and Siege came up.
Yeah.
And it just happened that it was a perfect fit for us. It was close for us. And that's really what changed everything. And we were on this great trajectory, losing weight, looking better, being healthy.
Sure.
And then we moved.
Yeah. Moving to Florida was like a big boom. Stopping block. like
people
oh my God, what now?
Well, people would say setback. Yeah. It was not a setback. It was like a leap in like 10 years reverse.
Mm-hmm.
It destroyed every ounce of progress that I had made, not only physically, but mentally.
Well, it was a big hurdle to get over. I mean, you went from being somebody who was in New York for 40 plus years. You did not give a damn about anywhere else other than, well, we'll go visit it. It's fun. Great. I'm going home to New York. I will
always live in New York.
Yeah. But then we come down here and it's like deer in the headlights, shock to the system.
Yeah.
It's a lot to deal with. And, there's a lot of talk down here of people coming after New Yorkers, and rightfully so in a lot of ways. But at the same time, like, there's a lot of pain point there that it's tough leaving somewhere you've been your whole life and readjusting to a brand new place with a different culture. And you've got a very hostile group, a subset of people who are here that are like, we don't want you here. Leave.
Yeah, they don't want
95
you here.
goes north too, right?
They definitely don't want you here. But it wasn't just the move itself, because that was hard in and of itself. Obviously, I mean, I've been coming to this specific area in Florida since I was a little kid. So I was fully aware of Boca and this area, West Palm and everything like that. I've been here so much, but it was more than just the moving. It was leaving my friends, just our normal everyday routine, because I'm such a routine person. So that threw me off. But the job aspect killed me too. Going from what I was doing in New York as an executive assistant to working at Publix.
Yeah,
again,
tough.
It was so hard on my ego. And it was just like, why did I bother? Why did I do this? Why did I do this to myself? Like, I should have just stayed in New York and everything would have been fine. But now I'm back at the beginning and I'm a loser and I'm 40 years old and I'm working at freaking Publix making $14 an hour, like a 15-year-old.
It's funny that, we tend as people to harp onto things like calling ourselves losers when you have to take a back step. But at the same time, you're doing so much to readjust that some people never even try. And that's like, therein lies like a lot of the mindset stuff that I talk about in our content for this business, that, you could look a certain way in front of other people, but at the same time, you're actually out there in the field, you're trying. And that's more than 90%, and that's just a made up number, but 90% of the people out there will just be like, that's really hard. I'm not doing that. But if you're in the arena, you're fighting, and even if you're struggling, that's massive. That's huge.
I mean, in that sense, yes, I was definitely doing it. But at the other end of it, and this is what a lot of people won't say, is that I became complacent in that misery. So I'm working in a dead-end job where I'm not getting anything. I'm with people that are okay making minimum wage for the rest of their lives.
Yeah.
For all the good that Publix does, there's also the other end of it where they're like quick to say, we're going to make you a manager. We're going to do this. You're going to get promoted. And then you sit on the list. And it is literally that, a list. You take a test and you just have to keep applying and applying and applying. And if you don't become a manager, then 3 years later, you have to take the test again and you apply and you apply and you apply. And it's just a vicious cycle. And it's not to say that Publix isn't great for some people.
Yeah.
but it's not great for everybody. And it's definitely not great for somebody that is starting over late in life, which is what I was doing at this point. I had to start over again. And I think in that, I just became complacent in just where my life was, and I didn't think I could be any better. And I think that was the problem. It's not that, yes, I was actively working and I was actively getting out and I was actively doing what I needed to do every day to survive and to take care of us, or at least help to take care of us, because I wasn't really contributing much. But at the same time, my mental health was taking a nosedive because of the fact that I didn't feel like I was contributing much to us, to our daughter, to myself.
Right.
I just was getting up and going through the motions every day.
I mean, that's huge. You know, I mean, do you feel like, I'm interested to hear what a woman's perspective is on getting through adversity like that. What the mental gymnastics look like, because I can tell you, for a man, a lot of it lies in like, I have to be a provider. I have to do this. I have to do that. If I don't do this, I'm a failure, and I'm going to let everybody down. And so you push through amongst I've heard a lot of folks come to me when they're like, dude, you're so strong, you're mentally strong, I could never do what you're doing. But the reality is, like, that's what the whole stacking bricks ethos was building those habits.
Mm-hmm.
The habits for me was what got me up every day, even when I didn't want to. So I get up and the first thing in my brain is like, I'm thankful to be awake another day, right? But at the same time, my body is killing me. And I'm like, I don't want to go to the gym. This sucks.
Yeah.
You know? What's that look like from a woman's perspective?
So I think for women, I mean, in my own opinion, is that you have to get up. Like you can't lay in bed and be depressed about it, because most of the time, like if you have a family, you have children and things like that, you have to make sure that your child is taken care of first. So I think a lot of times what happens with women is we tend to put everything else first and focus on that and put ourselves completely last. So that's where that happens, is that you're not taking care of yourself because you're so wound up in taking care of everybody else. So you're making sure your husband or your wife is getting taken care of, and your kids are taken care of, and the animals are taken care of, and the house is taken care of. And so you feel like, well, I'm providing what I need to provide because I'm making sure your laundry's done, and I'm making sure you have dinner, and that you're prepped for the week, and that you have your supplements, and the cat has his food, and
Right.
the house is clean every day because you guys would go to work or in school, and I was vacuuming and mopping and doing all the things I needed to do. But where was I taking care of myself? And I wasn't. So what did I do? I would come home and I went back to my old habits. I would smoke weed, and I would, watch TV and scroll on my phone and read stupid books. I mean, not stupid books, but I would read like fantasy novels, because it was easier to read a fantasy novel than it was to live in my own life, in my own head.
What got you out of your head and back into training?
Ooh. I mean, oh God, just being fed up
Being fed up with what?
with where I was at physically, mentally, emotionally, just being fed up. I was getting tired of being walked on at work and feeling like I was being abused every day. I was tired of our daughter thinking that she could talk to me a certain way because I felt crappy about myself. So that meant that she can treat me like crap.
That's huge.
I got tired of listening to you treat me that way, because if I feel like crap about myself, of course you can treat me like crap, because why shouldn't I take it? Because that's how I feel about myself.
Yeah.
And I got tired of just living here in Florida and just feeling like crap every day. I mean, this is a hot place, and it is not easy to be heavy in an area like this. And it sucks when you go to the beach and you feel like crap. Like you feel overweight and hot and gross, and you just want to like enjoy yourself.
Yeah, it's hard to move.
Yeah. And it's
Hard to
just,
move.
it sucks. You know, pushing carts around a parking lot when it's 100 degrees out is not an easy thing to do when you're 275, 280 pounds. Like it's just, and only 5'6", 5'7". So
Right.
all those things just built up over time, and it just became evident and clear that I needed to change. And, you know, going to the doctor and talking to the doctor and, you know, after getting health insurance after all these years
Yeah.
and seeing that my cholesterol was high, my blood pressure was high, my glucose levels were high, like everything was just high and bad and wrong. And I was just like, oh my goodness, like I'm going to end up like my parents,
It's overwhelming.
taking medication and having surgery and all these things. And that is literally the last thing I want to do. I don't want to be on prescription drugs for the rest of my life.
Yeah. What was the deciding factor in you getting on the shot? Was it just kind of kickstarting everything into gear?
Yeah. So talking to the doctor and having a game plan, you know, discussing the weight loss that I had been on before and all these other things, and explaining to them like I would always hit a wall. And there was always a number that I hit. And I had been hitting it for well over 20 years. It was the same number. I never got past 230. And that was once before Bree was born and after Bree was born.
Yeah.
You know, the smallest I had been since we've been together was an 18. And again, like that weight was that number. I could not get past it. It didn't matter how much I dieted, how much I worked out, how much I did for myself. I could not get past that number. So when I talked to the doctors, they suggested, look, obviously there's something going on. You need to get this weight off of you. And if you don't get this weight off of you, this is what's going to happen. And so I said, okay, discuss the different types of shots that we can go on. Let's, you know, figure out a game plan. And so we discussed the differences between, I don't know what the generic for Ozempic is. I guess Wegovy or semaglutide.
Yes.
And then the tirzepatide, and the doctor said tirzepatide was the way for me to go. She felt that that would be more beneficial for me than going on Ozempic.
Yeah.
So that's where I went. And
Has it been difficult working that into a regular conventional training routine? And because I can tell you, like you know how I am. I was not a fan of it to begin with, but at the same time, over time, I realized that it was doing you good. It wasn't harming you.
yeah.
And that you were actually still putting in the work and not just getting lazy and sitting around letting the shot do all the work.
Well, I think this is the other side of it. So for men, you can eat a lot more every single day than women can to continue to lose weight, because our bodies are using food different ways. And I think that was a struggle for you, especially at the beginning, because you're watching me not eat. But at the same time, I was overeating for so long. And you, again, are way more physically active. Even in your job, you were more physically active. You need a lot more calories to maintain whatever weight that you wanted to maintain. I need a lot less calories because I'm not trying to maintain weight. I'm trying to actively lose constantly. You're trying to stay, you know, the size that you are.
Well, not right now.
Okay.
Right now,
So you want to lose like 15 pounds. But
Yeah,
for
no, I get
me, we're talking about well over 100 pounds.
Sure.
So I had to cut out a lot of the food. Now, as far as like how I feel, the only difference I notice with when I'm taking the shot is that I can't eat certain foods, which has been a blessing, to be fair.
Yeah.
I can't have too much fried food. I can't have too much acidic food. I can't have too many carbs. It makes me feel sick. I can't have too much sweets because it makes me feel sick. You know, I have to have smaller portions. So it forces me to portion out my food throughout the day versus eating large meals, mid to late day, because I'm not a breakfast person. I'll never be a breakfast person. I have a protein shake in the morning, which starts fights constantly in our house. But that's just how it is. Like, I will never be a morning person. Like, I have my coffee, I have my protein shake, leave me alone.
That's true. You've never been a breakfast person.
Right.
I mean, unless you're you get up and you're like, maybe I'll have some eggs. Maybe.
Well, if we go out for
and it's got to be
breakfast,
like at least an hour or two after.
it has to be at least 2 hours after I get up. Like, I'm just not a get up and eat person. Like, it takes me a long time. I don't even get up and have coffee in the morning. Choking down pre-workout is like the hardest part of my day.
I know. But you do it.
Well, because I have to.
Which, well, look, I give you a lot of credit for that. I mean, you still get up and you get it done. The biggest thing for me, I remember with the food and you, was that one, you used to eat with your feelings, and you know how I have always been. I eat for fuel.
I was high.
Well, I don't mean just being high. You grew up in a family where everybody did the same thing, and they weren't high either.
That's true.
You guys would eat, and it would just be food that, well, it tastes good, so I'm going to eat it. And most people are just like that. I mean, I was for a long time too, but I also looked at it like, if I'm going to go to the gym, then I'm going to eat cleaner, give myself a better source of fuel for my workout. Mm-hmm. Because if I don't, then I know I'm going to feel like crap after the fact. Body adjusts in that certain way. If you're eating calorie dense food that doesn't hold a specific nutrient profile, it'll react in a certain way, and usually in the negative. Yeah. So the whole thing was like, the big switch that I saw with you was going from only eating with your feelings, and even when you got sober when you stopped smoking weed and you stopped even having like a glass of wine every so often, you moved from, well, I eat it because I just like it. And yeah, we still do time to time, but it was an all the time thing. And now it's like, okay, I know that I have to eat, chicken, if some shrimp, whatever the case may be. I know you don't eat beef, but there's a major shift that goes on there, right?
Well, I think that there's a big difference between your diet versus my diet. And that's like a big thing that I guess people could point out about us. You eat the same meal every single day. It is steak with potatoes, chicken with rice, and fish and something else. And sometimes you have vegetables and sometimes you don't. And sometimes you add sauce and sometimes you don't. But it's literally the same meal 4 times a day.
You know why I do that?
Because that's how you control your bad habits. And I understand that.
That's right.
I cannot eat like that. I will never be able. Can't. I will never, ever be able to eat the same thing every single day. It's not possible for me. So in that case,
it's not mentally possible.
Correct.
Right.
I have to have a variety. And if I don't have a variety, I notice that's when I spiral out of control.
Do you find that that's more difficult to track?
No.
Okay.
Because I know what is supposed to fit in, I make an effort to pay attention to what I'm eating every single day, mark it down, and that's what I'm eating for the day.
Yeah.
Now, obviously, I'm not going to say no to having a cookie or maybe like an extra apricot or something like that throughout my day.
Either.
But I'm very aware of what I'm eating, how I'm eating it, and making sure that it's plotted out for the day so that I know it fits within my macros.
Yes. Don't mind me. I'm pulling up questions.
Oh, the Instagram questions that people wanted to know about?
Yeah, don't mind that. I have them up there.
That's okay.
That's all I wanted to do. But go ahead.
Yeah, so...
Sorry if that seemed rude. I wasn't trying to be rude.
No, I was just curious. Yeah, so food is definitely like, it's very different for us. When you fall off the wagon, you fall off the wagon hard. You cannot say, okay, I'm going to eat 3 bites of cake. You're eating that whole slice.
Or
and you're usually going back for another.
Yeah. That's so true.
You go to my parents' house on a Friday night and I plan your food because you're like, I want fish and I want rice and that's all I'm going to eat. And then you eat a piece of meatloaf and a piece of steak or a piece of this or whatever.
It's always out on the counter.
Because she leaves it on the counter for you just in case if you want it.
It's the best and the worst.
But you'll pick at all the other food.
Yeah.
I will not. there's only one time of the month that I will 100% tell you, leave me alone, don't talk to me about food. And if you dare say anything about my one slice of freaking cake that is in the refrigerator, or you try to eat it, we are going to fight.
But let's segue into that for a second, because that can also go into training. That can go into the entire scope of a woman's nutrition and fitness plan and their entire lifestyle during that period of time. Something that I talk about in the content. It's very, very important that men understand you can't treat women the same way you can treat men during that part of their cycle. You just can't
any
do
part
it.
of your cycle. Men's bodies are different than women because of the fact that we have a cycle.
Yeah.
You know, everybody laughs at those videos of the women, you know, I'm alive, I'm dead again, because they're showcasing exactly what goes on every 4 weeks in their body. There is 1 week where you are dead in the water. You are not going to hit PRs. You're not going to feel good. You're going to lift, you know, moderate weights when you're lifting. It's not going to be your best week. And then you're going to have 1 week where you're lifting your absolute heaviest. And then your other 2 weeks are just kind of mid, where sometimes you do a little heavy, sometimes you're a little bit lighter. It really depends on the day, how you feel, and personally what you're training. Women are obviously going to train a lot harder on leg day than they are going to do in a push-pull day. Why? Because we are just stronger in our legs. We're carrying the majority of our weight in our legs.
Depends how you're built too.
Well, but most women are predominantly stronger in their legs than they are in their upper body. It's just natural fact. You know, we do carry a lot of weight in front of us because of our chest and everything else. Sure. You know, you're carrying our bodies are built differently, so our leg days are going to inherently be our best days anyway. So yes, when I'm on my dot, I'm very open and honest with you that this is how I'm feeling today. I'm not gonna, like, please do not push me. Like, obviously I need like a little bit of a nudge at times, but I don't want to hear, no, you're putting another plate on and I don't care, because I'm going to tell you F you and I'm going to walk away. Because if I am just not feeling capable of doing it that day, I'm not going to kill myself.
Do you find me to be one of those trainers that does that?
I think that you have changed, especially over the last 6 months. And whereas you are not like that anymore. I think that you've learned from prior experiences with us being in the gym together, where we have gotten into fights in the gym and I've basically given you the finger and we've yelled at each other. And
falls into the realm of communication though too.
I think now we're at that point where if I tell you straight up, like, this is what's going on, I'm on my dot, like, I don't feel good, you're like, cool, no problem.
Yeah.
The only thing we fight about is cake. Because if I buy a piece of cake, you're going to eat it.
So true. I love cake.
Yeah, but it's my cake. It's not your dot cake. It's my dot cake.
Cake is cake when it comes into the house. No, it isn't.
No, no. Cake is not created equally.
Do you think that that trainers need to understand fundamentally that they have to train women differently than they do men?
Yes.
I mean, all around?
Absolutely. I think that trainers need to understand it, but I also think that that falls on women to be able to express that in a way that's healthy, to not just be like, I don't feel like it, or throw themselves around or be, you know, jerks to their trainers. Like, if you just come at it and be like, listen, I got my period this morning. I don't feel good. My stomach hurts. My head hurts. My back hurts. My chest hurts. Like, everything hurts. Like, I just don't feel good. Okay, cool. Let's augment your training for the day.
Yeah.
Which we do. If I tell you straight up, like, I am not squatting today. I don't feel good. Everything hurts.
My
like,
hips hurt.
You're like, cool, get on the leg press.
Right.
Push 4 plates on the leg press. Like, you know, like, we have to augment it, because I still want to work out. I still want to get all the work in. I just don't feel comfortable doing what's laid out in front of me that day. Does it mean that I'm going to stop doing everything? No, I'm just pivoting for that day. And I think that that's okay. But again, that's part of communicating. And if you're not communicating that, then you're going to be resentful. You're going to get hurt. You're not going to want to continue on with training. And that's where the trainer falls into play, is that the trainer has to understand, if they're expressing this, you have to learn to pivot. It can't just be like, well, but I do it. Okay, but have you ever had your period? Have you pushed a baby out of your body? Absolutely not. So you have no idea what a woman's going through. And that's it. Also, I don't know what you go through. So,
A lot of aches and pains.
well, but so
That's
we have
about
to be
that's really it.
aware
And there's
of
a
each
lot
other's
of,
difference.
there's a lot of mental struggle that goes into it with, like I said, work stress, life stress, being a provider for the family. Like there's a lot that goes into that. Some days I get up, I don't want to do anything in the gym, but I'll get in there, I'll give it my effort and do the best that I can. And I think that's important for anybody that goes into the gym, is that you don't have to be perfect every single day.
For
That,
sure.
if you're getting in there and you're putting forth at least some effort and you're trying, that's the most important thing that you can possibly do.
Yeah.
Giving up is the biggest thing that people struggle with, because they just go, I'm not doing it. And I see that 9 times out of 10. I've seen it even in some of my past clients that they've come through the door and they just give up. And it's such a shame, because some of them have had plenty of potential to do big things and they just don't want to. Whatever reason they had, whether it was me, whether it was the program, whether it was their own goals have shifted, or they're in a bad place in life, I don't think it matters. I think what it is there's a lack of communication. There's a lack of like get up and go within them. And it's very hard for people to pivot out of that. They just go, well, I'm done.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of people go into it like, I really want to do it and I really want to feel better and I really want to look better, and all these things that they have, these ideas in mind, they just start getting into the work and they realize how hard it is. And it's easy to give up. I mean,
it is easy to give up.
It's super. Look, the gym with the new year, new me. And it's not to say that people shouldn't try, but when you set out like I'm going to be different January 1st, or I'm going to start this Monday, or I'm going to do, why are you waiting until Monday? It's Wednesday. Do it today. What's the difference? You're setting yourself up for failure, because you're like, okay, well, if I start on Monday, and hello, we've both done that before. I'm going to do it on Monday.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. So what do you do between today and Monday? You eat all the crap you want. You drink all the booze. You smoke all the weed. You do all the bad things that you're not supposed to do. And come Monday, what happens? You feel like shit.
Because you're hungover from all the partying.
You're bloated. You just
Lethargic.
All the carbs and all the grease and all the sugar and everything that you've just inhaled, and all the drugs and the alcohol and everything that you've done, and you don't feel like it. So then you get up Monday and you're like, tomorrow.
What do you think's the biggest learning curve that you've had to endure while making the changes that you have, at least, especially in the last year?
For me personally?
For you personally.
For me, it's always been communication, because I am not from a family of communicators, or healthy communicators, I should say. We communicate, just not healthy. But so communicating has always been my biggest problem. And so learning how to communicate it to you, exactly how I'm feeling, what's going on with my body and all those other things, I think that has changed a lot, because you are able to understand where I'm coming from.
Yeah.
And then to not aggress at me when I'm not giving you the results that you feel that I should be giving you.
Sure. I'm a lot more willing to listen.
Correct. And I think that has changed a lot in our dynamic over the last 6 months.
Would you say that communication is probably one of the biggest things that's changed in our relationship?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I would agree.
For sure.
That was a question, by the way, by my sister. She asked, how has your relationship with each other changed or evolved together over the years? And I would personally say, from my perspective, that the biggest changes have been communication, an effort to get up and go, and not giving up on ourselves or each other.
I mean, yeah, we definitely have learned to communicate better with each other.
Everybody backslides, but I think we have generally.
Well, I mean, we used to fight once a week. Now it's like once every 4 months.
Yeah.
But and it's not to say we don't bicker. Everybody bickers with each other. And if you're saying you're not, you're lying. But we communicate better. with each other. And there's no fakeness. There's no hiding things anymore. There was always this air of like, you were hiding stuff from me. And so because I felt like you were hiding stuff, then I was always paranoid that you were doing something. And I always felt like you had your life was separate from our life. Whereas I felt like I was giving you and Bree everything. I felt like you were always holding a piece of yourself back.
Yeah, I always had one foot out the door, but that is a conversation for another day, because we could go a whole hour.
Oh, for sure, for sure.
Into my story and why I was that way.
But as far as like
It's
the
about you,
change,
really.
I think like I think a lot of the change that we've done growing in our relationship. I also think that you stepping up and stepping into becoming the father that you are today versus who you were even 4 years ago is night and day. And I think that that has helped a lot in our relationship because I don't feel the stress of being the present parent constantly.
Sure.
Because
100%.
that was literally my life, was being the parent that was, I was the good guy, the bad guy, the yes, the no, the everything. I did everything for her. And I feel like since you have taken on much more of an active role in parenting, it has taken such a weight off my plate because I can rely on you to be there. Whereas before I had to rely on my parents, and my parents aren't her parent.
Yeah.
So it was hard because I didn't want them to overstep, but at the same time I needed help.
It's true. And I always, even when I got off of playing music and stopped, all the BS, we always had your parents. So it was like easy for me to kind of hide in the basement and be like, yeah, they'll do it.
Yeah.
And then as I came down here and took on that role, I realized like, they're not always going to be there.
Yeah. And
It's time for me to step up as a father.
Even when you had started Wes's program, there was still that aspect of like me time, me.
I had to.
I understand that.
I had to.
But there was a lot of that still was very selfish and self-absorbed and all that stuff.
Yeah.
I think moving here, the biggest benefit was that you learned what it was like to be the present parent 24/7.
Absolutely.
Because you were the only parent.
Everything was
for those first 3 months. Yeah. It was you and her, and yes, mom was there to help, but when she needed a parent, you were the parent. She wasn't going to call me and talk to me about it over the phone. She needed somebody there with her who was understanding what was going on. And so you had to take an active role into not just the parenting aspect of okay, do you have your food? Do you have your laundry? Do you have this? Do you have that? But her mental health, that mental health check-in that you had to do with her constantly. I mean, she moved too. It was hard on her, just as hard as it was on us, if not worse. She's a teenager at that point. So you took on such a big mental load with her that I think that it gave you perspective into what I had been dealing with for all those years prior.
What's interesting is that's a good segue into sort of like this greater understanding that most people are not willing to step into that role. And the reason why is they're not prepared for it. That they are thinking in terms of, this is my situation every day. I don't have to worry about X, Y, or Z because I have, or to handle the situation, right? And when they're forced into that position, a lot of people freak out. They automatically are like, this is a lot. It's stressful. I can't handle it. And I'll be honest with you, that selfish time was needed for me to develop the character that would eventually have to be put into that role. Because if I wasn't developed, to be way more mentally strong, way more resilient to adversity and BS, then I would have fallen apart and I would have been back in New York going, we're not doing it. Right.
Yeah.
And that forced me out of my comfort zone. I was already very well adjusted to being out of my comfort zone. And I think a lot of people, if they do things like get into a fitness program, if they lock in their nutrition, those small habits, which is what the Stacking Bricks ethos is all about, those build a stronger, more resilient person that is able to withstand a number of different things within their life, within the scope of their daily life, variables that happen within daily life, and anything that goes along with that. I mean, there are so many things that people can do just to put themselves out of their comfort zone. The reality is they just won't do it.
Yeah, for sure. It definitely,
It's easier to numb out with, drinking a bottle of beer or, smoking a
yeah,
joint.
for sure. And it's not to say that we didn't do that when we first moved here, because we were
Yeah.
going through so much. But I feel like the learning what you're capable of and then applying that every day is super helpful, not only for your personal mental health, but for the mental health of the people around you that rely on you, that love you, that need you and part of your life. And so you getting better, me getting better, it only benefits us as individuals, us in a relationship, and us as parents
100%.
for her.
100%. What's the future for you? It's probably the last question I'll leave it off at because we're almost done here.
Oh my goodness. What is my future? Well,
What's your goal for the future right now? Because that always can fluctuate.
So my personal goal is to continue on my weight loss journey to get down to a weight that I feel comfortable at, and just to continue getting stronger every single day. I'm definitely in a better mental position where I don't feel like I'm struggling the way I used to anymore. Self-image obviously is a little, it hangs there every other day, but that's because a lot of when you lose weight, the skin, it's so defeating when you look and you're like, why doesn't my body look the way it should look right now? I'm working so hard. But that mental struggle, I think, will resolve itself over time.
It will. Long-term process, long-term gains.
Facts.
100%. Thanks, love.
Yeah.
It's a good
My
episode.
pleasure.
And we're out of here.